looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. In today's video, we are gonna get clinical and explore the personality of a well-known killer. Well, an on-screen fictional killer. Now, for the past 15 years, I have counselled and cared for multiple different types of personality disorder, so, using some scholastic literature and also the guidelines of the DSM-5, I'm going to look at the alpha slasher, the apex monster of horror films, Michael Myers. For context, I'm not diagnosing Myers, but I'm looking at likely causes and the criteria, reasons and possibilities of why he is like he is and does the things he does. I will explain all technical and medical jargon, but just to warn everyone, we will be talking about abuse, autism, trauma and many other topics, so if this isn't your thing or you feel triggered by these topics, then this is your last warning. Anyway, let's crack on. Now, for today's video, we are keeping it all related to the first Halloween film, which was released in 1978. So we're not going to count the sequels, which ruined Michael, and certainly not the hit-and-miss rebooted trilogy, which climaxed with Halloween Kills. Oh, and I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie's version either, so I'm not touching that. So, let's start at the beginning. That night, Michael's parents came home and found him on the front lawn, bloodied knife in hand, and realised he had done something terrible. Now, I want to just avoid the term psychopath, because that minimises so much information and reduces everything down to a generic word with assumptions and connotations which remove context. So, although we will discuss psychopathy at the end, let's take a nice long journey towards that particular terminology. Now, there are novelizations and books about Halloween which detail why Michael did what he did, but as I haven't read them, let's look at what the film gives us in its own hermetically sealed bubble and work with that. In the first Halloween, Michael Myers is young, very young. At the opening part of the film, he is clearly well under the age of 18 and also clearly under the age of 15, so we are unable to diagnose antisocial personality disorder as this requires the individual to be at least 15 years of age. Now, as I discussed in my video about The Strangers, before antisocial personality disorder, we have oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder, which are the prerequisites to antisocial personality disorder, but as Michael is so young, there would have needed to be some symptomology. Not much is discussed about Michael's history in the film, only really what Loomis saw when working with him inside the hospital he was detained in, so we don't know if Michael was continuously flouting rules, engaging in antisocial behaviour, continuously challenging authority, or refusing to accept social norms before he killed his sister. We know that Myers did kill his sister, as we see it on screen, and we know that Edith and Peter Myers, his parents, came home to discover him, but we still have very little information outside of that to understand why he did what he did. And that is the lure, power and fascination with Michael Myers. We can never comprehend why he stabbed his sister because we aren't given a throng of information about his upbringing and childhood. Now, had Michael been abused or grown up in an unstable family, his father remarrying to women who don't like children, meaning that Michael would have been, in the words of Coolio, I'm sorry about this, been spending most his life living with his dad's second wife. I won't do that again. Then maybe the attitude of hatred towards people, women especially, would have been apparent. So, let's look at what happens after the stabbing of Judith Myers and take a tour through his psychology from that point. First of all, could Michael have conversion disorder brought about by the murder of his sibling? Okay, first things first, what is conversion disorder? Conversion disorder is also known as functional neurological symptom disorder. Symptoms of conversion disorder usually start abruptly after a stressful or traumatic event, and most of the time, many of these symptoms can then stop abruptly as well. So, let's look at the symptom list. We have tremors with limited consciousness, problems with balance, weakness or numbness in the arms and legs, vision problems such as blindness or double vision, difficulty in swallowing, slurred speech or an inability to speak, partial or total hearing loss. With conversion disorder, there is often trauma, an adverse life effect, an acute or chronic stressor preceding the onset of said conversion disorder. Many patients with conversion disorder are found to have a history of child abuse, both emotional and sexual. Other psychological factors contributing to conversion disorder include poor coping skills and an internal psychological conflict. Patients with conversion disorder are more likely to have certain psychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety, and personality disorders, than patients with well-known neurological conditions. Now, as extreme stress and trauma normally bring on conversion disorder, the suggestion is that killing his sister was so traumatic for Michael that his vocal functions changed forever. However, Michael doesn't just stop speaking, he becomes virtually catatonic. He goes from sneaking around a house and killing his nude sister to just staring into a wall for 15 years. And we know that because Loomis tells us that. I watched him just sat there staring into a wall, but not at the wall, through the wall. Maybe the conversion disorder affected Michael's motor functions and this was not by choice. And again, we don't have any information about whether, before he killed Judith, he was a happy or talkative child. We don't know, but due to his heinous act and sudden vocal and emotional shutdown, Michael may well have had conversion disorder after his homicide. But even more importantly, was there something which caused him to kill Judith in the first place? So, could Michael Myers have a neurodevelopmental disorder? Well, once again you ask, what is a neurodevelopmental disorder? Well, according to verywellmind.com, neurodevelopmental disorders are types of disorder that influence how the brain functions and alters neurological development, causing difficulties in social, cognitive, and emotional functioning. And the most common neurodevelopmental disorders are autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit and hyperactive disorder, but we can also include conduct disorder. Now, first things first, millions of people live with neurodevelopmental disorders and are not serial killers, and many are highly functional people, so this doesn't mean that these are direct causes, more contributing factors that make up the overall person. Real-life serial killers John Wayne Gacy and Ted Bundy both had neurodevelopmental disorders, and Adam Lanza, who committed the Sandy Hook massacre, was diagnosed with Asperger's. However, all of the above didn't kill people because of their neurodevelopmental disorders. There was also another factor which played its part: personality disorders. The dictionary defines personality disorder as a deeply ingrained pattern of behaviour of a specified kind that deviates markedly from the norms of a generally accepted behaviour, typically apparent by the time of adolescence and causing long-term difficulties in personal relationships or functioning in society. However, personality disorder expert Theodore Millen offered a deeper diagnosis, stating that personality disorders should not be understood as mental illness, but as styles of behaviour, cognition, and emotion that imply inflexibility, which limits the acquisition of new behaviours, and difficulties to handle stressful situations, besides promoting vicious circles of functioning. Basically, in layman terms, a personality disorder is a rigid and inflexible way of thinking and acting which, according to Millen, is formed over the course of many years via experience and can be understood through the biological perspective, the actual structure of the brain itself, as well as the interpersonal, cognitive, and social perspective, which all incorporate psychodynamics in terms of relationships, interactions, and even the interrelationship between drive, motivation, emotion, and behaviour. There will always be a debate over evil and mental illness. Evil is an all-encompassing word which eliminates any other motives or explanations to why someone does something and just leaves them with that tag of being evil. However, when analysing someone like Michael Myers, it's important to study all the aspects of his makeup before labelling him with such a generic term as just evil. So, let's go on to personality disorder. Let's move up to where Michael's older. What personality disorder would Michael have? Well, there are two personality disorders which could encompass Michael, and they are antisocial personality disorder and schizoid personality disorder. Let's take schizoid personality disorder first. According to the DSM, or Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, to give it its full name, Schizoid personality disorder is defined as a persistent pattern of disinterest from social interactions and a limited variety of expression of emotions in a close personal settings, starting in early adulthood and there in an array of contexts. And it requires at least 4 or more of the subsequent symptom list. Number 1, neither wants nor likes close relationships, including being part of a family. Number 2, almost constantly picks introverted activities. Number 3, has little, if any, thought in engaging in any sexual experiences. Number 4, seldom derives pleasure from any activities. Number 5, has no close friends other than immediate relatives. Number 6, appears apathetic to the admiration or disapproval of others. And number 7, shows emotional coldness, detachment, or a flattened affectivity. Michael is certainly a loner, never sexually assaults any of his victims, and appears to have no desire to bond with anybody else. However, his rage, hostility, and repeated violence make schizoid slightly more challenging, so let's look at Millen's subtypes of this personality. There are 4 different subtypes of schizoid personality disorder. Number 1, remote, which is distant and removed, solitary, isolated, homeless, and disconnected. Number 2, languid, which is marked inertia, weary, leaden, lackadaisical, and lethargic. Number 3, affectless, passionless, chilly, uncaring, lackluster, and all emotions are diminished. And number 4, depersonalised, which is disengaged from others, dissociated, and disjoined from everyone else. Michael certainly shows an affectless side in having no emotions, being passionless, and also being a cold person. However, as schizoids are generally even-tempered with anhedonia, alexithymia, and some biological deficits which stop them feeling emotions, Michael would have needed to be leaning this way before he got all stabby with his sister, and, as the psychodynamics are often about being scared and vulnerable when they are young, then what pushed him into filleting Judith that night? However, if conversion disorder is the suggested diagnosis, then we could have a case for it, as he completely shut down after killing Judith, and it could be explained as such a sensitive and lost soul was appalled at what he did. However, Michael continued to kill once he escaped prison. Now, if he had schizophrenia or something along that continuum, then maybe it was about being compelled by voices, but as he cannot be reasoned with and shows the semantic aphasia and lack of general empathy, understanding and even the most rudimentary contemplation of human emotions whilst slicing people up, he doesn't have the characteristics of someone obeying an auditory or visual hallucination. So, let's look at antisocial personality disorder. First of all, the definition. Antisocial personality disorder. A disregard for and violation of others' rights since the age of 15 as indicated by one of the 7 sub-features. Number 1. Failure to obey laws and norms by engaging in behaviour which results in criminal arrest or would warrant criminal arrest. Number 2. Lying, deception and manipulation for profit and self-amusement. Number 3. Impulsive behaviour. Number 4, irritability and aggression manifested as frequently assaulting others or engaging in fighting. Number 5, blatantly disregarding the safety of others. Number 6, a pattern of irresponsibility. And number 7, a lack of remorse for actions. A diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder would also require the person being at least 18 years of age, conduct disorder was present by history before the age of 15, and the antisocial behaviour does not occur in the context of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. When discussing antisocial personality disorder, Millen again had subtypes of the disorder, and these are: number 1, nomadic. They feel jinxed, doomed, and are often vagrants, vagabonds, or just wandering the earth. Number 2, malevolent. They are fearless, guiltless, brutal, truculent, desire revenge, and are rancorous. Number 3, covetous. The person feels intentionally deprived, seeks retribution, and is avariciously greedy. Number 4, risk-taking. They are heedless, bold, audacious, intrepid, and daring. And number 5, reputation defending. They need to be thought of as remarkable, formidable, and never to be questioned. Biologically, Antisocial personality disorders, and we are now on the continuum of psychopaths, feel no empathy and have no remorse, and this starts from biological deficits in areas of the brain. These deficits are about processing language on the left hemisphere of the brain, but there are also issues around childhood, attachment, abuse, witnessing violence and inappropriate behaviour, and the fact that antisocials can often grow up in environments where they see their phenomenal field as a world of survival where no one can be trusted, and they terraform the world around them through intimidation and violence. The most apt antisocial personality disorder subtype for Michael is malevolent, because he is fearless, guiltless, brutal, truculent and rancorous. But as Michael was under the age of 15 when he killed Judith, and then apparently just sat in hospital and stared at a wall, then he would have needed to be diagnosed with conduct disorder before this, and so would have had a history of behaviour throughout his youth. And again, from the film, we don't know that. So finally, we come to Psychopath. Psychopathy has a checkered history within the DSM and also some clinicians, but generally, psychopathy is a neuropsychiatric disorder marked by deficient emotional responses, lack of empathy, and poor behavioural controls, commonly resulting in persistent antisocial deviance and criminal behaviour. Considered to have biological deficits, strong antisocial traits, and genesis from childhood via bedwetting, cruelty to animals, and fire starting, as well as the dark triad of the three sinister personality traits of narcissism, Machiavellian, and psychopathy, the term psychopath is so encompassing in both pop culture and daily life that it's easy to label anyone who doesn't see things the same way as us, acts unreasonable, or even the extremes of someone who kills someone under the pejorative term of psychopath. However, and in conclusion, it's what makes Michael Myers so great. We know so little apart from what we see at the start and what Loomis fills in that we are left making our own backstory in searching for answers. Yes, there was a novelisation which stated Michael was rejected by a girl before he killed his sister, but I think in the film, less is more. And, whilst we could diagnose him, the fact he displays neurodevelopmental symptoms, schizoid personality disorder symptoms, and antisocial personality disorder symptoms make him such a great on-screen killer. Basically, we know so little, but we know enough to be scared. That's the appeal. Anyway, that's our little case study. I hope you learned something or were entertained, or both. And if you were, then please like, share and subscribe, and even leave a comment or make a suggestion for a future video. And until next time, I'll catch you later.
Totally.